All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat,
And I'm Eric.
and today we are going to talk about Shadowbringers. Eric's been, I imagine, neck deep in Shadowbringers since the release, so we're anxious to talk about that. And then also, we're going to be talking about Bloodstained. 2 weeks ago, Eric brought it up. He talked about it. I talked about it a little bit last week when I picked it up, but now we're going to have more of I would say, a little bit more final thoughts on the game and just kind of be able to bounce around ideas. Because the first time we talked about it, it was only Eric talking because I hadn't played the game. So now it should be a little bit more interesting. And then from there, we're going to talk about these Switch revision, rumor, speculation, and then also basically more focused on the Switch Mini because that seems the most realistic. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with what RPGs are coming out in 2019 that we know of thus far that we're actually going to be interested in picking up or are excited to play. I was surprised there's actually quite a few on my list. I thought maybe I'd have maybe one or two, but once I started writing them out, I realized I had a lot more than I initially planned. So very anxious to get into that. So Eric, how do you feel about Shadowbringers?
Why don't you just tell me what you played first this week?
Well, dude, I've been playing Bloodstained, so but I've been checking out some of the Shadowbringers reception, and I don't think I've seen anybody say anything overly bad. Like worst comment I think I saw was from Dreamcast guy, and he said that the next any update after this, it's all downhill because he doesn't think it can get any better than the Shadowbringers. Like I think the way he put it was that effectively he felt like Shadowbringers for Final Fantasy 14 that it's pretty much peaked. Like this is about as good as it's gonna get. Like he can't imagine it getting any better. Obviously, that's glowing praise. That's not actual criticism. But what? How do you feel about it? Does that resonate with you?
Well, here's the thing with it. Like, it's most definitely the highest the story's ever been. Like, A Realm Reborn was good. Heaven's Ward was, like, fantastic. Stormblood was pretty good. And then, like, Shadowbringers just, like, blew everything away. Not in terms of just Final Fantasy 14, but I'm sorry. Still kind of getting over my fever, but so you may hear me cough some. But this one just blew away in terms of a Final Fantasy. This is if Naoki Yoshida is going to be helming Final Fantasy 16 and has this type of writing, this type of presentation, this type of soundtrack, and this wonderful cast of characters in conflict, then like FF16 isn't safe hands. I mean, like he would have to like really screw up on that end. But in terms of Dreamcast guy's comment, it's the story's technically not done yet. We got a big revelation of the game's world and lore and the whole time. So we get this like big thing that happens, but technically we have not gotten to what we would consider the true final arc of the story. And I think the next expansion is going to be the one that does it. And the way that this one ends and how it's going to lead into the patch update stories, because how the game works is you get the full story expansion. And then over the course of 2 years, every 3 to 4 months, we get story segments that work its way into the next expansion story. So we're going to get those segments there. And what led us to the next patch story has me very intrigued. And I can't say anything, which really hurts because I really want to do a spoiler talk. And just everything that happened at the end is so ridiculously mind-blowing, especially since if you've been following the game and its story since back to 2010. My God, like eyes wide open. I can't believe the story went in this direction. And it's just so fantastic. I wish I could go into the tiniest detail on it, but one, most people wouldn't understand it, and two, I really want you to get on the game and see for yourself what Shadowbringers has done, that which is so monumental on the MMO level, is that it has successfully meshed. I think this has always been the case, but Shadowbringers just like definitely just reaffirm that for me, is that they've successfully mixed the JRPG formula with this MMO structure. And you think to yourself, there's like these two mesh and they don't work out. You got these quest NPCs and this pacing issue, which you can give a little bit of that to Realm Reborn, but starting on Heaven's Ward, like the story paces itself so well. And it's so, even despite being an MMO, most of the main story is new player friendly. Or I mean, not new player friendly, single player friendly. That like, unless you are really strapped for cash, can't pay the what was it, $12.99 a month for it.
Well,
And
it's free to level 30, right?
it's free to level 35.
35, so.
Yeah. So you can get an idea of how the combat works, though. Hold on one sec. Let me have a call.
No worries.
Despite that, yeah, I mean, 35 gives you a little bit of a good idea, but I think it's past a Realm Reborn where you really start seeing where the game shines for that, which is why I kind of think they should make the free trial up to level 50. And
now, like, maybe this isn't necessarily Shadowbringers related, but I remember one thing they did, this is going back, but with World of Warcraft, when they started making it easier for new players to get into it and get caught up with some of the expansions, it would take less time to get to level 30, right? Whereas initially it would be, level 30, it would actually take a fair amount of time to get to that level and complete those story content, but they would actually, make the stat increases better for each level, and then it would take less experience to go to the next level in order to get players to be able to get to the new story content quicker. Is that something they did with this, and do you think that's a negative towards the game, the fact that it's cutting down the amount of time it takes to get to the content?
well, what they do is like right now in Shadowbringers, how you get to like level 80, 70, 80, is you do the main story quest, which gives a good amount of EXP. And there's various content you can do. You can do the side quests that are there that are good for world building also.
Mm-hmm.
You have fates, which are like open world events that happen that you can go to and you get EXP for participating in it. There's dungeons that you get by level 71. And you can start dungeon spamming for EXP if you want.
Mm.
Or you can do the roulettes. Or if you do like one leveling roulette a day, it'll give you about roughly 1/3 your EXP bar.
So were these techniques that were always in the game that people have been using since the Realm Reborn came out, or
Yes.
is this new stuff they put in to help newer players get caught up?
No, this is nothing new. This has been
Okay.
around. It's stuff that was added in during A Realm Reborn, but it's been worked on and improved more over the expansions. In terms of older content, they've made it so you get a lot more EXP
Right.
during.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah.
So you mostly only got to do like the main scenario quest. You can do like a leveling roulette if you want to stay at like real ahead of the game, but the main scenario quest for the most part will get you ahead, especially when you have post content that will give you bonus EXP. Like we all started at level 50 when Heaven's Ward came out. Most people are already at like level 53 or 54 about the time they're done with the post Realm Reborn content.
Mm,
So you'll already be like 4 levels ahead
I gotcha.
of what the requirement
So
is for Heaven's
does
Ward.
does the Final Fantasy 14 community, do they look down on newer players because they're accelerating the levels? They're getting stronger at a much quicker rate, like it's not as difficult, or is it really not an issue?
What do you mean? Can you ask that again?
So you said that you get more experience with levels, so to help newer players kind of get to the newer content
Mhm.
a little bit quicker. Obviously, you're not going to get to Shadowbringers the same day that you get Final Fantasy 14. That would be ridiculous. But do some of the older players or the community that have been playing this for years upon years, do they kind of look down on some newer players and say, "Hey, you didn't really go through the struggle that I went through," or is it just kind of like, "Hey, I'm glad you're here"?
No, I've never heard anyone say that ever.
That's awesome.
If they do, I think they're probably just really dumb and petty because people understand this is an MMO game and eventually content's going to be outdated. So I've never seen someone just say, "You never went through the hardships I did." I think the only time I've really heard that is ultimate fights, which are like the hardest content in the game.
Sure.
And when the new content comes out and their higher eye levels come out, people participate in this content with higher eye level or new abilities from the expansion. So they say, like, "Oh, well, you didn't play it during its prime, so I don't feel like yours counts or anything," which I still think is BS because those fights are still extremely ridiculously hard and test like everything about the game. Like, despite if like the eye level or settings have changed a little bit, that
Mhm.
doesn't really change how hard those mechanics are to comprehend and take down.
Sure. Yeah, because at the end of the day, honestly, too, it's the more people that play the game, the more content that they're going to create and the longer they're going to support it. Obviously, the fact that it's a Final Fantasy game and it's had so much success, it's probably going to be supported for a very long time. I mean, we just saw Final Fantasy 11 carry on for how many years was it? Like 14 or
It's
something
still
crazy
carrying
like that.
on.
Well,
Came out in 2002.
it's still available for play, but they finally wrapped up the main scenario recently, didn't they?
They did. They add some little stuff here and there, but in terms of like the grand story, it's done.
Yeah. So, even that one went on for so long, and I think that Final Fantasy 14 looks to be more popular than even that one. So, but what I'm trying to get at, whether you believe that's the case or not, is the fact that the more people that play a game that you enjoy, the more money that's going to get put towards it, the more content that's going to get released, the quicker content's going to come out, and the more likely people that you enjoy working on it are going to stay working on it because it's so popular and they want to keep it going on this cash cow. And the best way to do that is to keep the content good. When you have quality content bringing in new players, that's a good thing. When they don't have new players being brought in because of the content, what they end up doing is a bunch of, free to play microtransactions and things like that that really dull the experience. So it's good that people are kind of realizing that hey, the more people that play this, the better.
Yeah, and to answer, hi, dude. To answer your comment there, I can tell you right now,
What was
the
the comment?
community in he's asking the FF14 community is a bunch of elitists, and of course you're going to have your small subset groups that mostly hang out with themselves. But I can tell you right now, FF14 is surprisingly for how big and popular it is now is one of the friendliest communities ever. Like even like in dungeons, like if someone doesn't understand something, like people are always like helpful and be like, "Is there anything you don't understand? Anything you need help with?" Stuff like that. It's not like World of Warcraft. If someone asks like, "Hey, can someone tell me how to do this boss?" and someone will be like, "Don't die" or something like that. No,
Yeah.
it's like they'll straight up say, "Hey, this is the mechanic. This is what you need to look out for." Yeah, yeah. Very, very rarely do I ever come across people who come in conflict with each other.
So
And so, if you're like a new player, if you take a few minutes to look around and see, there's most of the time like guilds or free companies they call it in this game who invite new players and are already willing to help them. Like there's a I mean, there's a lot of friendly people out there. So, you know, if you're worried about like toxicity, FF14 is not known for it. Like you'll very rarely come across. Like there's always going to be bad eggs you'll come across. I mean, you can't prevent that, but for the most part, 98% of the time, like I've never come across much conflict.
One thing that, and look, I'm not, a little disclaimer here. I put maybe 100 hours in the 14, and that may sound like a lot for a regular game, but for an online game, that's not that's not a lot for people that have been playing, 3 or 4 years, right, or longer. But one of the things that I noticed just from my experience with 14 was how much MMOs have changed, and I think in a good way. Like for a while, I used to hear from people all the time that would say, "Oh, I don't really like MMOs. I like single player games." And I was kind of in that crowd too because when I was younger and I would play MMOs, it was kind of a different experience because yeah, there was a main story, there was things to do, but you would log on and it would just be like a town square somewhere, and you would just have 100 people just sitting there talking. And not that that's wrong or anything, and you still will see that occasionally in 14, but it ended up being more of a social thing for people to just come on there and hang out. And I think a lot of that had to do with the technology, meaning like slower connections. And it was just people were getting used to the idea of immersing themselves in a world and like making friends. And I think everyone was a little bit younger back then. So what I'm trying to get at is that I think MMOs just kind of got this negative vibe about it that, oh, like people just, they go on MMOs to make friends because they can't make friends in real life or something, right? So some people just want to like stand off from it, like, oh, I can't be one of those people. But when I played 14, like I'm not saying there wasn't people, talking or anything, but like it seemed like most people were just busy playing the game. And the fact that you could play most of it single player, like it was really designed for just like a standalone Final Fantasy game where if you wanted to do the online component, you could, where you play with other people and stuff like that, but you didn't really have to. And like I'm saying, like I was getting at before, is the people that are on there, they're not on there to just like, because they ain't got nothing better to do. They're on there playing the game. And so I guess what I'm really trying to get at here is just like if you haven't played an online game before or you haven't played an MMO in a long time, I would definitely suggest trying 14 because what I played, I really, really liked it. And I plan on jumping back in. It's just one of those things where I think about doing it and then I think about, do I really have the time? Like there's this other game coming out soon. I definitely want to make sure I still play that. And I get worried about having a subscription to something that I'm not playing for 2 or 3 months. But at this point, I've seen so much hype around this that I feel that I have to get back in and finally get to some of the later content that everyone's really talking about. But from the little bit that I've played, it's definitely a different type of experience than I've had with some of the older MMOs that probably a lot of people have played when they were younger but haven't really gotten back into the genre in a long time. So definitely a different experience.
Here's a misconception that people have. The misconception that people have is I need to get the end game as soon as I can. I want to get to where the people are doing the end game stuff. And I tell these people who enjoy Final Fantasy stories especially is don't worry about it. Don't worry about trying to catch up to end game. The number one best thing about this game is its story. Like bar none. The story, number one best thing. It's combat and content comes second in terms of like what is the best thing about this game.
Right. It's
So
not,
when people
go ahead. Sorry.
So when people say to themselves, "I got to rush at the end," don't. You need to enjoy you need to just enjoy the story. Like you just go through it like you would just watching seasons to a TV show. You don't need to be like, "Oh, I need to quickly binge watch all this stuff to get to here." Just watch it at a pace you like, enjoy it. The content will be there when you get there. They're going to offer you methods to catch up to people once you do get end game. So enjoy yourself, find some friends, talk to them, socialize with them, um, and just go through the progress like you would normally playing a JRPG that's not online, because that's the pace you're going to be going about 80% of the time. There are going to be dungeons you enter with people, and there's going to be trials that you enter with people, but these are far in between the content that you take on at your own pace. And even then, these dungeons only take about 30 minutes. Now, granted, there are queue times depending on your job, which you may be waiting about 15 to 20 minutes to get into the dungeon, but you can do other content while you're waiting for that. But like I said, you got to enjoy at your own pace. This is not like other MMOs. This has a beautifully rich Final Fantasy story. It has its ups and downs, some in its quality sometimes, but the highs are so ridiculously good. Like, I played through Shadowbringers, and at the ending, I have not had such a good feeling, satisfied feeling from a story, especially a Final Fantasy one, since probably like Stormblood and Heavensward, honestly. And it's something I just wish everyone would see, because this is like my last hope for the Final Fantasy series. It gives me a little reassurance that there is potential hope for the future as long as you put the right people on. And so it makes me look forward to 16
Well,
in
and
that regard.
it just seems like they prioritize the game, whereas in the past with other MMOs, kind of the draw has always been, get on here, build a community, make friends, and it's not that that stuff isn't here from what I've seen and the little bit I've played, but it seems like the main priority is the game itself, the story, the what you expect from a Final Fantasy game. It's trying to focus on the fact that it is a video game and it is trying to tell a story. That's the main focus here, and I think the priorities of this game are really on point. So I'm excited to play more when I get to it here. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and something I hear some people say is that like the story, will decrease in quality and how it's presented because it's an MMO. This game has broken that too. It's just as good as any other JRPG you would play, and arguably even better. And it keeps getting better and better as the expansions keep going. So I wouldn't worry about the MMO aspect of it harming it in any way. At this point, I could probably say this game is more of a JRPG than it is an MMO. In game it becomes an MMO again, but your adventure to that endpoint is just all JRPG feeling.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, free to level 35, you said?
It's free to level 35. If you're interested in playing, myself and a couple friends from the Resident Arc Discord um, play on the Primal Data Center Hyperion server in particular. So if you want to go on there, jump, say hello to me, I'll say hello back most of the time if I'm on.
That server, oh my god. Okay, I don't know if it's still this way, but a while ago, Eric talked me into getting on. This has been a while now, getting into back into Final, because I played this game on the PlayStation 3. Then Eric told me, hey, you gotta get back into it. So I got it for PC, and I jumped on that server that him and some of the people he's talking about are on, and but he was like, oh yeah, it might take you a while to create a new character on that server. Oh my god. I kept having to log in and log out for like not continuously, but I had to kept checking for like 8 hours, and eventually, I got up in the middle of the night to go use the restroom, and I like noticed that it would let me on, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I created my character and joined the server. I don't know if it's still that same way, but
No, they've
okay.
opened up more servers now,
Okay.
so it's a lot easier to get in.
Yeah.
Hyperion is one of the more populated servers for sure, but there's a lot bigger populated ones out there. So there you shouldn't have an issue getting in anymore, if you pick that one. That thing is kind of a thing of the past.
Well, I guess I didn't mean logging in. I meant the
Creating a
first
character
time.
into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's been solved. Okay.
I had the privilege of jumping straight from 1.0 to 2.0, so my character has always been on that server technically.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that about wraps up our Shadowbringers conversation here. Really, really want to jump into it. And, July is shaping up to be maybe the best time to do that. So, yeah,
Yeah, it
definitely have
looks
to
like
check
there
it
may
out.
be a slight JRPG drought, especially if you're not interested in that new Fire-Emblem. I'm still very iffy on that game. I'm gonna wait
Fire
like a
Emblem.
day or two and see how people react to it, then get it.
Yeah, it's one of those games that there's something about it that makes me want to try it, but deep down inside, everything I've seen from it makes me think, I don't know, this probably is going to be a very average game. But I don't know. I saw the director of the game said it took him 80 hours to beat just one plot line of the game, and then there's 3 different stories, so it's like over 200 hours of content, and that just has to be super padded out. So
I cannot see it being. Did he specifically say the main story is
well,
80
there's
hours
3
or is
distinct
the
stories
amount of
depending on
content?
yeah, there's 3 distinct stories depending on what house you choose, and each storyline is supposed to be its own story, meaning, own, like, unique cutscenes and everything like that, so it's not supposed to be recycled content. I'm sure parts of it are, but, apparently just one house took him, I think, like, 80 hours. So I don't know. You always hear this stuff, Final Fantasy 15 was supposed to be like a 50-hour game average. And to get through the base story initially with the way the game was originally released, I did it in like 22 hours. I mean, obviously there was like 80 hours of just running around in giant open fields and collecting frogs, and there's some cool dungeons and stuff, but yeah, they always say that like, oh, it's extremely long, and then you find out like that's like half of that is just fetch quest and dumb stuff. So I'm with you. I have to wait to see what the reception is for that game when it actually comes out. But Bloodstained, Eric, did you beat Bloodstained? Because I picked it up last week and I've been playing it a lot.
I've beaten it, but I haven't 100% completed it. I had to travel out of town like
And you've been having to
a
play,
few days after.
and you've been playing
I
some
got
Shadowbringers too.
I've only been playing Shadowbringers.
Yeah.
Now I've been playing with my Pocket Go, like the one you got last week.
Oh yeah.
Also, I mean, I got one too.
Well, I gave my thoughts on that last week. Do you want to quickly just
It's good for what it's worth. It's a $40 handheld. It can play relatively well enough up to Game Boy Advance. It has some issues with Super Nintendo. A lot of the games run fine on it, but then there are some that are going to give you trouble, especially ones that are like dual processor
yeah.
type deal. But it's a fine little system. Beyond that, it's got about 4 hours of battery life on it, depending on what you play. I wouldn't recommend playing PlayStation 1 on it unless it's like a very non graphic intensive game.
Yeah. I played Vandal Hearts on it for about 30 minutes and it worked fine, surprisingly. Which, I mean, there was a little bit of bleeding and stuff from the screen on the edge from some of the FMBs and stuff like that, screen tearing. But I mean, it's still like there was no stuttering with the audio or anything like that. So yeah, I was very, very surprised. Now, I'm sure if you booted up Gran Turismo or something, like it probably would not run very well at all.
Yeah, if
So
you're looking for like a high end emulation device, I wouldn't go for this. But if you like the size feature of it and you like the build, and I will say this is excellent build quality. I took it apart and like
I,
everything
s-
is well put together.
I saw some of that. Apparently, when you take it apart to do some cleaning or whatever, it was a pain in the butt to put it back together.
It was a pain in that the screws strip easily. So
That can be disastrous. Yeah.
beyond that, it's pretty basic. Like one of the screws I have are just stuck in there, but I can still pull the thing out. but the
Good
thing
one
is
too.
still fully put together just fine. I had a piece of glue actually that was behind the glass.
Oh wow.
And I was like, I am not settling for this. I took it
So, oh,
apart.
I thought you meant you put the glue behind the glass.
No, it was
That's
already
why I
there
was
when I bought it.
surprised. I was like, wow, that's such a gutsy move. So it came like that. Okay.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have taken it apart if that wasn't there. I was like, I'm not having it. And I took it apart and just cleaned it out and used lens cleaning.
Yeah, I have a little bit of bleed through on the very top if I really look for it for the backlight. That doesn't really bother me. But once I saw
I
on
fixed
their
that
disc, yeah, with some black tape, I saw some people were doing some stuff like that on Discord and
electric tape.
or electric tape. Yeah, that I thought about it, but then I saw like a couple people were getting frustrated, like, "Oh, I can't get like the on and off switch is like they can't put that back in the right spot." And like there was all these people like, "Well, you have to do it this really specific way." And I just thought to myself, this will eat up 4 hours of my Saturday afternoon. I'm okay with that backlight coming through a little bit. Doesn't bother me. So,
It's not hard if you get it out, but the question is if you want to get it out.
yeah.
I say it's a nice little device. If you're looking for something that's like a cheap little emulation machine, this thing definitely serves its purpose. If you just want something for Game Boy Advance and earlier, it serves those all well. It has some issue with Super Nintendo, like I said, but I played some Zelda, Oracle of Ages and Seasons. I tried out Pokemon Fire Red and Zelda Minish Cap, and like those games ran perfectly fine. And Dragon Quest III for Super Nintendo, that ran great also.
Yeah. So I played lots of Sega Genesis games. I played lots of Game Boy Advance games. Like I said, I played Vandal Hearts on PS1 just as a like test, and it worked. I imagine something like Suikoden might work decently well. Um, so if you wanted to try that, but I wouldn't buy it for PS1 games. But yeah, it works good. I mean, obviously, like we said, Super Nintendo games, it's kind of hit or miss how well they work, but they're definitely playable. They're just not ideal for certain games. Like Zelda Link to the Past runs kind of slow for ideal circumstances, but other games run well. So, yep, pretty nifty device for the price. But as far as Bloodstain goes, like I picked it up last week. I got the PS4 version. I wanted the Switch version, but I was seeing all sorts of things about how the Switch version just has been having issues. They're working on it, so it's not like it's never going to be up to par. But from what I've seen, it runs at half the frame rate, and lots of people are saying certain parts of the game it runs to almost down to like single digits and the frame rate. I don't know if that they're just exaggerating at certain parts of the game, certain boss fights. But I just thought to myself, I'm hearing lots of great things about the PS4 version. Why don't you just get the PS4 version? And I'm really glad I did. I mean, not only does this game look really, really polished on my 4K television, running on my PS4 Pro, but it plays really, really well. And I was surprised how much I've enjoyed this game. Because these usually aren't my types of games. I enjoy them a little bit. I'll play them for 10 or 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but at some point I just get bored. But this game, I almost feel as if it's impossible to get bored. Like there are so many, like such a wide array of like just loot drops and material drops to the craft new items and like upgrade your like what seems like hundreds of like skills that you can get and acquire from defeating enemies. Like there's like every time even if you run back through a similar part of a dungeon, there's always something for you to acquire that will assist you further along in your upgrading and tinkering. I mean, there's like really cool optional things like checking a book out from a library, which will boost certain stats, which are kind of a unique, or I don't want to say unique, but a cool idea because I've seen similar things in other games, but I like that it's implemented here. Um, I mean, I think it's really well balanced. Every type of weapon feels unique. So, for example, there's a certain type of sword that I've been using, and when I switch to a whip, because it's got more attack power, I'll notice like, oh Jesus, like I'm having a hard time hitting enemies at first because I have to get used to it. I like the fact that there's that much difference in between weapons. It really gives a lot of variety to the gameplay. And I mean, even like enemies, they don't tend to overstay their welcome. I mean, like one or two, three hits, they're usually done. Obviously, if you go into an area that you're not quite ready for, it might be a little longer. But I haven't really gotten to the point where I feel like the enemies are sponges. Like they die. I hate to say this as a plus, but like like the enemies just don't overstay their welcome. Like they're entertaining, but they give you a little bit of entertainment value, and then they're off the screen. You know, because the fact that you're going to go back and forth, it's it's unrealistic to have enemies that just won't die, right? So, um, really positive thoughts. I mean, the only real negative things I've seen is that sometimes in the PS4, the game will freeze for a half a second, which doesn't really take away from the game that much because it happens so rarely. I did have it crash one time, but I've put like 30 hours into the game and it crashed one time. I'm not saying that excuses it, but that could have just been a fluke. I've noticed small things like the character model on the side of the screen. If you kick, for example, like her leg will like look like it goes through the wall, but it doesn't actually go through the wall, which kind of reminds me of PS1 games. Again, it doesn't hurt the game, but there is that kind of indie feel to it, which it's kind of an indie game because it's a Kickstarter game, but there's a lot of professional people with great resumes working on this. So, but like honestly, like I have very little negative things to say about the game. Eric, since you've been playing it a lot longer, is there anything about it that you want to say that you maybe has changed your thoughts from 2 episodes ago, or anything additional you want to say or comment on? You have both versions now, right? The PS4 and the Switch. Yeah. Hold on, I can't hear you right now. I think you're you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I muted him when I
Oh,
coughed.
sorry if you felt like I was talking over you. I don't know if you were saying anything.
No, I never said anything.
Okay, cool.
But I was waving this around while you were talking.
How were you? Okay.
This is the
I was
Switch
looking
version.
online. Yeah.
This is the Kickstarter copy.
That case looks awesome.
It does, but it's only a sleeve, so
Oh,
don't
don't get too excited. Okay.
Yeah. That is the biggest difference. Is I get this, a little advertisement for more stuff from Fan Gamer, and then this has not been open, by the way, my Switch version.
Oh, so you haven't had a chance to play the Switch version then?
I'm not going to play the Switch version for a good while because first off, I beat Bloodstained on PS4, which fantastic game. I have little to no criticisms. Anything I do have criticisms of are minor. I did find the game a little easy on normal mode. The game's not too hard, so I am interested to try it on harder difficulties. Maybe I'll try it on the Switch one day. But there is well, before I say that, I have about 98% done of the map. It's just finding little nooks and crannies. And there are some challenges to do. Like there is an 8-bit dungeon secret you can find, and there's these challenges people offer. I haven't beaten those yet. Because like I said, I went out of town and I only got to play for like 2 or 3 days. I will jump back into it, but Shadowbringers took up so much of my time. But this Switch version, if I knew what the quality was going to be or what they were going to do with it or downgrade to it, I would have never gotten the Switch version.
It's the difference is there's lots of videos on YouTube you can go watch. The difference between the two is staggering.
And I can understand it being 30 frames per second, especially since you're the nature of the console. But the graphics are heavily downgraded. There are a lot of technical related issues that they're working on. They're working very hard towards it and everything like that. And I think it eventually will be in a good state to play. That's why I haven't gotten rid of it. If I play through it again, I'm going to play through it on the Switch for sure. But if there's anyone planning on getting that version, I highly suggest, if you have other options, to play it on the PS4, Xbox, or PC instead. I think the amount of drawbacks this version has doesn't make up for for the fact that you can go portable with it. If you really want a portable experience that badly with it, then it's serviceable enough. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you have more choices than the Switch.
What's really weird about this entire thing is that this is the type of game that I think would be perfect on the Switch, and it just sucks that there's such a big difference between the two. And I've seen this from lots and lots of people that say, hey, like, I played the Switch version first, I thought it was okay, and then I played the PS4 version, and I went back. Like, I was baffled because on the Switch version, it felt like my character was just like moving through like wet sand or something. Like like it was just it was not nearly as buttery smooth as it was on the PS4. And like you said, visual downgrade. The fact that the docked version, it has a dynamic resolution, so it's not always at 720p, which is really weird because in portable mode, it apparently is at a constant 720. So, like you said, they're working on it, but it just sucks because the Switch version would be the ideal way to play the game, in my opinion. And it's kind of weird that it was released in that state because
Well, the Switch version was started after.
yeah, but the fact that like
Because
they had to have known though. Like, I'm surprised, because like, for example, Dragon Quest 11, the Switch version, it came out a year later, right? Or it's going to come out a year later. It didn't They didn't try to cram it out a week after the PS4 version. I assume that's A, to make more money, but B, to polish it out and make sure it's still a quality experience. Granted, I'm comparing it to a game that hasn't come out yet, but
the reason for Dragon Quest in particular is that the Unreal Engine that they used for the PC or PS4 and PC version um, does not work very well on the Switch. So they pretty much had to convert the entire game to the Unreal Engine that works on Switch.
yeah. And
That's why it took so long.
that's totally understandable, but the cool thing about the Switch was that you could play these awesome games you play on your console on the Switch, and there's still a level of quality there. So, and Nintendo's very particular about making sure that the quality is as good as possible to really close that gap between the two. Obviously, you're going to have certain things that are just going to run better. I'm sure once Witcher 3 comes out, that's not going to play anywhere near as well as it would on your PS4 Pro. But, there's a certain level of quality control around it. So it's not that, like, look, like they're, like you said, they're fixing the issues. I'm sure 4 or 5 months from now, people are going to say, you know what, the Switch version is actually pretty good now. But I'm just surprised that they went ahead and just released it when they did. Maybe they just had so much pressure with the fact that it was kickstarted, and a lot of people like yourself picked the Switch version, so it would have been a little crappy for you to have to wait 6 months, But
something that gets me is that, all right, so they take down they tone down the graphics, they decrease the frame rate. I wouldn't say in general this is a high budget, high graphical game. Like, I wouldn't say that at all. Like, I have a feeling you could put this game on PS3 and 360
easily.
with little to no issue. But somehow, some way, they had a really difficult time optimizing this for the Switch. And I'm not gonna act like I know what goes on behind the scenes on stuff like that, but like, they sacrificed so much to get that to work on the Switch, and it still runs nowhere near as well as the other versions. Like, if you took down the graphical quality and decrease the resolution, like, you think you could stick to 60 frames per second, but no, they still had to take it down to 30 frames, and like, you're pretty much on dynamic 720p.
which
Like,
is
you still can't run 60 frames per second
yeah,
on it.
this is a 2D side scroller. Granted, it looks very well polished. I don't want that to take away from it, but it's not a graphically intensive game for you would think a modern console like the Switch. So yeah, it is really really strange. I wonder if part of it was because about a year ago or however long ago, maybe shorter than that, they went through and redid the graphics or whatever. I don't know if maybe that had a part to play where they could have spent that time optimizing the Switch version, but they had to go back and do this unexpected thing. I don't know if that maybe played
I think
into it.
my two thoughts are either they don't have a good idea on how to optimize for the Switch, or they rushed this version outdoor. I think I would have to check sources, but I think they had another company help port the Switch version. So
Mm,
I think it might come down to maybe getting that same company back and be like, "Hey, make this better," or hire some other company or do it yourself and trying to improve it. But I'll
yeah.
see what happens throughout the months. Um,
Well,
and if it improves, then I'll try it on the Switch.
yeah. Needless to say, I mean, there's been so much buzz about this, and the fact that it's been selling really, really well. I know that Nintendo's probably looking at this like, okay, do you need some assistance? Oh, what's going on here? Because we got to get this to play well on the Switch because we want more releases in the future to come out on the Switch, and we don't want this stigma around it that our competitor is a better way to play this game, especially for something that's not really required to be on a PS4 Pro or a PS5, for example. So
But griping about the Switch aside, Bloodstained, absolutely fantastic game. This is the successor to Symphony of the Night that we've been waiting for, and I look so forward to any more games they make in the future. Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon was a great game. Ritual of the Night here, fantastic game. Koji Igarashi definitely has a passion for making a game like this. So I'm glad it's successful as it is, and I really look forward to Bloodstained 2, which will come out in probably 2030, based on their how fast they work. But
well, maybe it'll be in 1080p.
I'm very sure they won't need to kickstart the second one.
Oh, absolutely not. I doubt it. I'm sure they're making enough money off this to help fund the next one, and I'm sure they'll have outside investors come in and help with that and everything like that. So I don't
Yeah,
think they'll have any problems.
they're
But
good.
but I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, you just said they're good?
yeah.
Totally agree.
Mhm.
All right. So talking about the Switch though, there has been a lot of speculation over whether Nintendo is going to come out with a new version of the Switch. There's been speculation over a Switch Mini and then a Switch Pro version. And a lot of this, what's been unique about these rumors is usually, well, let's take a step back. Usually, rumors are coming from that we hear about this type of stuff is coming from Reddit or 4chan or something like that, where you can just look at it and kind of blow it off because it's most likely not true. It's just somebody trying to get their rumor spread around the internet and so they can gloat about it. But this stuff has been originating in business publications. So we have like Business Insider. I think initially we had one from the Wall Street Journal, and the people that were talking about this initially were investors. So that stuff is usually a little bit more reliable, but there's this really good article found on Business Insider that came out about a day ago, 2 days ago, I guess, and it it's reasonably short, and I think it gives a good scope view of where we're at with the possibility of a Switch revision coming out. So I kind of want to just go through that, and then that way we can talk about whether or not we'd be interested in it or whether we think one's coming, and everyone can be on the same page with the information. So let's just jump into it real quick, and I'll kind of skip the parts that don't really matter that much. But again, this if you want to go read the whole thing, it's called "Here's Everything We Know About the Rumored Nintendo Switch Mini Coming This Year, which could be smaller and cheaper." This is from Business Insider. So it starts off by saying Nintendo is expected to release a new iteration of the Nintendo Switch in 2019, according to a Wall Street Journal report from October 2018. That's basically where a lot of this stuff started to come up and surface a little bit. You started to see reports surrounding this. The report cites suppliers and others with direct knowledge of Nintendo's plans. Nintendo didn't comment on the report at the time, nor has it directly acknowledged work on a new version of the Switch. The report noted that the specifics of that new version of the Switch were still in flux at the time. In so many words, it wasn't clear what the new version of the Switch would be. Perhaps it would have a larger battery or a better screen or attached Joy-Con controllers or more, etc. It says analyst Sarakan Toro, I don't know how to say that, predicted in January that the release of the new version of the Switch, which he also expects to arrive this year, will lower the price of the existing Switch, or maybe even a light version of the Switch will arrive alongside a new version. So this is just basically going through the developments, right? So he said, I also think Nintendo will offer a Switch Lite or just keep the current version at a lower price, cover the low end of the spectrum, and offset sinking 3DS sales. One was said to be a more powerful version of the current console with enhanced features targeted at avid video gamers, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Despite the reported horsepower increase, this new Switch version is said to still lag behind Sony's PS4 Pro, etc. Obviously, the other version of the Switch was previously rumored is said to be a portable focus device, and Nintendo didn't respond to a request for comment on the report. The rumor isn't without precedent. Video game console makers, including Nintendo, are known for releasing new versions of existing consoles. The simple idea is new versions of existing consoles could be re-energize sales at the same time and potentially reduce hardware production costs. Similarly, in releasing a more powerful version of an existing console, console makers can bolster horsepower without having to release an entirely new platform. In the case of the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, for instance, both consoles offer sharper visuals and snappier load times, even though they're only intended to play the PS4 and Xbox One games. Nintendo could have revealed the new console this past June at an annual E3 video game trade show in Los Angeles, but E3 came and went without a peep. Now, two reports in April, one from Nikkei and another from Bloomberg, pointed to a change in Nintendo's plans. One new version of Switch focused on portability could arrive this year, and the second, more powerful device is either delayed or outright canceled in favor of a revision to the existing Switch. The report says that Nintendo will release a smaller, less expensive Nintendo Switch that focuses on its handheld gaming mode this fall. This lines up with previous rumors about a Nintendo Switch hardware iteration. Let's keep going here. The latter device, the more powerful device, is reportedly delayed. Bloomberg, however, said that the more portable version of the Switch could have arrived as soon as this June, and that the more powerful Switch will just be an update to an existing hardware rather than a design revision. Nintendo isn't commenting on either. So, and eventually, let me just go down to the crux of this. Eventually, this all kept spiraling with all these reports until eventually at a recent investor presentation, an investor literally asked Nintendo outright about this because they've been reading about this, and these are people that don't play the Switch. These are people that are investing in Nintendo, right? And they just read all these articles and like try to plan out, oh, is this the best time to sell their stocks and make some money? I want to buy low, sell high. So Nintendo said, while we are aware there has been coverage to that effect, we cannot comment in regards to speculation and rumors about new hardware or software. The president of Nintendo said in a recent Q&A with shareholders, it would spoil the surprise for consumers and is against the interests of our shareholders. So we're withholding any discussion. We're constantly developing new hardware and new software. We'll let you know as soon as anything is ready to be announced. They point out that this isn't a denial. And yeah, I mean, and that's about it here. Honestly, I don't think anyone's that I've seen is really doubting that a new iteration of the Switch is coming. It looks like it's more likely, from everything that's been pointed at, more likely a Switch Mini version than a Pro version at this point in time. And, you know, Nintendo's not denying it. And that's, you can't really look to Nintendo at this point to really confirm anything if they're not ready to announce it. I remember, or I saw that they, in the past, denied a new version of a Nintendo DS to like Eurogamer, for example, in an interview. And then the following day they announced a new version of the DS, right? They just weren't ready to announce it, and they just, no, it doesn't exist. And then the following day announced it. So, like it seems like there's enough information here to say that like there likely is a new iteration. So, Eric, A, are you in doubt that there would be a new iteration? And B, would you be interested in a lighter version or a small version of the Switch?
Of course, there's going to be a new version coming up. It's more of a question of will it be in 2019? I really feel like E3 would have been the ideal time, but then again, I don't think they want their Switch sales affected. So they might announce a new console closer to when they release it. So maybe it's something they'll announce maybe in September and be like, it's going to come out the same day as Pokemon. And you can pre-order a combo pack right now or a Pokemon themed Switch Mini, because I'm very sure Nintendo has heard that people rather just have a pure portable experience with it, or they would get it if it was cheaper, and willing to get like some hardware downgrade.
Yeah.
So I think there's most definitely an audience, especially for kids, for a Switch Mini. So I don't see how this could not be a thing, because, all right, so the Nintendo Switch, as great as a handheld as it is, as much as I love it, there's a few downsides to it.
It's
one,
huge.
it is big. It is a heavy handheld. So if you give that to a kid, it's going to feel a little heavy in their hands, especially a much younger, like say like 6 to 7 years old or somewhere around there. They're going to have a hard time holding that thing in their hand. Now, granted, that other week I was at a McDonald's and two kids were playing Fortnite on the Switch with each other. So I'm like, I don't think they're that heavy, but
yeah.
Well,
it's very fragile too, so you have to worry about with a kid, with that giant screen. Just if they just dropped it like a kid would, or they try to go skateboarding with it like you would with your Game Boy when you were a kid. If you drop that thing, like that screen's gonna shatter easily.
I think if a Switch Mini does come out, I think it's going to be heavily marketed towards children, because it's going to be lighter. The plastic is probably going to be made specifically to endure some hits to the ground, and I'm sure it'll appeal to adults also. But I think it's going to be in the same mindset of how the 2DS was, the original 2DS.
Right.
Like they're going to make safety methods for this. And I even debate if it's going to be called a Switch, because the concept name of Switch is that you switch between console and handheld. So,
well, here's the way they could get around that though. And this would get me intrigued. If they enabled cloud saves, so you could play it on your Switch, regular Switch, right? On your TV, you could play it in bed, your normal one, and then you could just take your Switch Mini and just load up your cloud save and like carry that in your pocket. It was pocket sized. That technically I think they could get away with still calling it a Switch.
Yeah, I mean, too bad some games don't transfer. Like Pokemon Let's Go, you can't cloud save. So It makes me wonder if Sword and Shield will allow you the cloud save. Honestly, I do hope a Switch Mini comes out, because that's exactly what I'd like to get my fiance. She's excited to play Sword and Shield, but she doesn't have a Switch, so I'm going to get her one around the time. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers, hoping they come out with this cheaper model, because it'll be mostly Shield that she'll be playing. She won't be playing many other games on there, so getting her a cheaper model would be ideal.
Yeah, for sure. I think with me, like my level of interest depends on a couple different things. I think it goes without saying. I think it's kind of implied. The Switch Mini, as we're calling it, would have to be as powerful as the Switch in portable mode already, right? I don't want a Switch that's not as powerful as my current one. I couldn't imagine them releasing, a more portable Switch that's like, oh, now you can play it in 480p, like, or something like,
Yeah, if the only thing it can do is portable, then I imagine you only need enough hardware power to power a portable version of it, like similar to a Vita.
Yeah.
So I don't think you would need to get the requirements that like will bump it up to like 1080p. Because I don't. Is there any games that play 1080? No, it's a 720p screen.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like it's limited at 720 from what I've seen.
Yeah, so you have to play 720 unless I'm mistaken. So having that and the hardware needed to just make sure you can run 720p just fine. I think you could probably get that console down to like 200, maybe 170, 180.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's got to be priced correctly. I mean, because I'm trying to think of who their target audience is for. And I think you got a point. Like, A, it's for kids, but then B, it's for people that haven't really jumped on board with the Switch. Maybe it's for the price. Like, I think that they do have to price it correctly so that people, on the kind of outskirts, like, oh, Octopath Traveler came out and I wanted to play it and I couldn't. I had to wait till the PC version. And now they have all these other cool games coming out, but I don't want to spend, $300 or whatever on a Switch. Okay, I'll get the Switch Mini. It's $180. Like it has to be priced correctly, but again, it has to perform as well as the Switch and main Switch. So that's a big thing for me. I still don't see me picking one up though, to be honest, because I already have a Switch and I don't really play my Switch that much, like as much as I thought I would in portable mode. As I don't take it with me to the doctor's office or anything like that, like they do in the commercials.
I'm a bit iffy. If there's a lot of appealing aspects to it, I may.
Well, the battery life, that could be a contender, but I've never ran out of battery life on my Switch, for example, so I don't know.
Yeah, depends on the game. Like indie games, it takes a while for the battery to go down, but if I play like Zelda, that's like 3 hours tops.
Yeah. So that's a concern too. So I guess there's ways they could get me on board. My thing is, I definitely think this is what Nintendo would do, is they would announce a Switch Mini, but they're still going to deny a Switch Pro because they don't want you to not buy a Switch Mini, right? So they're not gonna do a Switch Pro. They're not gonna acknowledge it because they want you to continue to buy a Switch Mini so they can get that money from you. They don't want someone to say, I'll just wait till the Switch Pro comes out. But then
if a Switch Pro does come out, then I don't think the hardware. I think the aesthetics of the hardware won't change.
Yeah, well, I think but 6 or 7 months after a Switch Mini, I think they'll go ahead and announce a Switch Pro because at that point you're looking at the PS5, and Xbox One X coming out, and I think that they're just gonna want like something to kind of sustain them until going to a different generation. And that is something I would want to hold out for, a Switch Pro, because I could definitely go for more stable resolution and portable mode, and a longer battery life, just a better performing Switch. I think that would be something to really interest me personally.
Switch Pro is probably I'd go with. Like if I had like a Switch Mini and Switch Pro here, like I would of course pick the Switch Pro. I like better performance. So and the aspect of console and handheld. So but there are people out there who just don't care about the console aspect of it, and they just want the handheld experience with it. They like the handheld experience much more than just playing on the big TV. So that audience is definitely there, and making it more appealing for children. Because I've had people ask me before, like if a Switch is good for their kid. I'm like, it can be, but you need to acknowledge that it's a heavy device. It's kind of more of an adult handheld, but kids can play with it just fine. But I would put a good case on it, like a really good Nerf-like case on it if you're getting it for your kids. Because if that thing drops, like it can possibly survive, but with the weight of the handheld, like it's heavily prone for your child to drop it.
Yeah. Somebody at my job, they got a Switch for their 3-year-old. And I just, like, when they told me that, I bit my tongue, but I just was thinking to myself, that was a terrible idea. A Switch for a 3-year-old. What is, I don't know. Maybe there's games for them to play on the Switch, but the first time that 3-year-old just like has a tantrum and starts slamming it against the tile or something. The $300 out the window. So
yeah. So if a Switch Mini came out, I could be like I could tell them it's like, hey, the Switch is a little bit of a heavier adult oriented handheld, but they make the Switch Mini that while you can't connect to the TV, it is very child safe. If you're looking for a very child safe product, the Switch Mini would be the way to go. That's assuming the Switch Mini can't be console to begin with.
yeah. So I would definitely be interested. I just have to look at the price point, look at the advantages if there are any, and the performance of it, and things like that. It's kind of baffling to me that if they were planning on a Switch Pro and a Switch Mini, that with announcements like The Witcher 3 coming to the Switch, that they wouldn't want the Switch Pro to be out with games like that coming out, because obviously that's going to be a higher end Switch title. And, I think that they would want that added performance, but I don't know. It looks like they're still working on the hardware and getting it down to the price it needs to be at. So maybe that's
Nintendo is
just,
no stranger to making like 5 iterations of their handhelds.
yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So I'm sure we'll see something like even beyond Switch Pro and Switch Mini. We'll see like I don't even know. I'm sure they'll find something wacky to release.
Yeah, and I guess you are right though. Like the portable aspect of it is really what appeals to a lot of people about the Switch, because the longer I've had a Switch, the more I've realized is I can play it in docked mode, but playing it in docked mode is kind of silly if it's a game that also came out on the PS4, because it's just going to look depending on the game. Obviously some games don't matter, but like playing Hellblade in docked mode is kind of silly if you have the option to play it on a different system, right? Because it's like the same concept. You're sitting in your chair playing it with a controller. It's just going to play better on the on another system than it would on the Switch. So that's kind of like the portable aspect is what appeals to you, right? So I guess it makes sense for them to focus on the Mini because that re-emphasizes the portable aspect. So yeah. Anyways, maybe this Christmas, maybe we'll see something.
I predict if a Switch Mini does come out this year, they'll announce it sometime in August and September, and they'll announce a package deal with Pokemon Sword and Shield for November.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. I think it'll have to coincide with Pokemon Sword and Shield somehow.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to capitalize on that.
Especially if it's going to be a child-oriented version of.
Yeah, and the fact that game has always been more mobile-oriented to begin with, that just makes a lot of sense. So, but yeah, so that's our thoughts on the Switch Mini, Switch Pro, Switch iteration. Let us know your thoughts in our comments. But move on to our final topic here. So, we're halfway through 2019, a little bit more than halfway through, and I was kind of curious to see if most of the games that we were looking forward to were behind us. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about what games are still coming out in 2019 that we're excited to play. And I started looking through some of the dates and games that are coming out, and I realized there's a lot for me personally. So let's see here. I have about 7 games that I'm actually interested in playing that are coming out in 2019.
I'm looking through like I know we bashed on Fire-Emblem earlier, but I'm sorry, but I really hope it's a good game.
Fire-Emblem Three Houses, yeah.
Because the gameplay looks good. It looks fun. It's just I'm just hoping it's just not an awful generic anime story.
Well,
that's just the biggest thing.
From the trailers we've seen, it looks like an awful generic anime story.
Yes, I mean it's really hard to justify much of it, but hopefully it's just bad trailers and there's more to it.
Right. Sometimes the trailers just do the game injustice. There's this Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age trailer where it's super cheesy, and it constantly has like all these like quotes from Paul Thier, and it's just like so cringy with the way they laid it out. Like it's supposed to be like a Star Wars movie or something, and it's just when I watch it, I'm just like, that is not the way the game plays at all. So sometimes, these trailers just they're trying to market to the wrong audience. So
Or maybe the trailers intentionally pander to the otaku scene. They're like, "Oh, I like anime stuff. Like, let's put more of the anime like stuff in, so people will get sucked into that. Then we'll give them a engaging story." I don't think that's how it'll play out, but something inside me tells me like I hope that's the case.
yeah, I was kind of trying to kind of split some of the games that I was interested in and some of the games like I'm like kind of interested in, and because I didn't want like this giant list of like games, right? And I ended up putting Fire Emblem in the maybe I'll buy it, but I kind of want to see the reception. It's kind of the same area I put Oninaki in, where I'm like I'm interested mildly. I want to see the reception though for this game, just because that hasn't really had a good track record. The developer Tokyo RPG Factory, so really
Oh,
want to.
for Oninaki.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's on the list here too. I honestly hope that's a great game. I've had my criticisms and worries of it, but there are a lot of things that look very appealing also to the game. I do like those type of games. So if it ends up being good, like a third time is a
right.
charm type of
It's
deal,
not $60.
and not be really price heavy. But like I said, I am jumping in very cautiously. I am going to see what the reception is and just get other people's feedback on it. And then be like, okay, I think that's enough for me to get into it, especially with a Switch version coming.
Yeah. So one game I am really excited to pick up that I have not played before, that I know you've played, the remaster or re-release of Ni no Kuni for the
Oh
Switch.
yes,
That's coming
you
out on September 20th.
you never
And
played the first one?
I've never played the first one, and I've heard not just from you, from lots of other people that it was a really good game.
It's
And
so good.
there's something about it that makes me feel like this is just like, I don't know. I always looked at it and thought this looks like this would be for kids and not for adults, like, but in a bad way. Not like in the same way like Shrek is both for adults and kids, but more like this feels like I'm watching something for kids. But I never gave the first game a shot, and from what I understand, it's really really good.
I mean, it's got the amount of content that could maybe borderline a teen rating, but it does. I mean, Studio Ghibli. I don't know if you've seen any of the Studio Ghibli movies, but if you've
Really,
not really, man, you really should watch some of this.
maybe I
That's
don't
like
know.
that's like anime movies that are good.
I probably have.
So
I'm
you're
just not a
triggering
big
people.
fan of that stuff.
Princess Mononoke, Castle in the Sky. Um, don't think of others. Um, Spirited Away. Nothing like that. Man, you should
I'm
watch some
looking
of
at a
those if you
list on
haven't.
Wikipedia, and I don't think I've seen any of this.
You're missing out. Those are fantastic movies. They're essentially like the Disney of Japan. I know some people may get triggered me saying that, but I mean like in terms of just like making quality movies and such, like they're up there
Sure.
in Japan. And Ni no Kuni reflects that they reflected all the good elements about Studio Ghibli and they put it in video game form. And I was really worried that it being a video game may harm the story some, but I think they really understood the product they were going into and they made sure that the story worked well in its video game RPG like setting.
Yeah.
They did a fantastic job and I can't recommend that game enough.
So coming out on the Switch on September 20th. Obviously, there's looks like there's going to be a PS4 and PC re-release of it also. So have that option. But I definitely think for this, I'll probably pick it up on Switch just because it just feels more right there to play it that way. So that's going to be September 20th. I'm definitely going to pick that up. But one game, the thing about September is there's 3 games coming out in September that I'm really interested in. We have Ni no Kuni on September 20th. Then
Link's
there's
Awakening.
well, yeah, there's that, but
that's what will be occupying me.
Wait, when's that coming out again?
September 10th, I think.
Okay, so that's coming out September 10th. Ni no Kuni's coming out on September 20th. There was a recent story that said The Witcher 3 release date's been leaked for September 24th. And then Dragon Quest 11 on the Switch is coming out on September 27th. That is jam-packed.
We also got Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
Which if you want to consider it,
I'm kind of mildly interested, but not really.
Dragon Quest 11 is slated for September 27th.
Yeah.
And if you're a Legend of Heroes fan, Trails of Cold Steel 3 is coming out for PS4. I mean, yeah, damn.
So
September jam-packed.
Yeah, and the thing is that all these games will take a long time, right? So I don't know, Link's Awakening, that's September 10th. So if you're going to pick that up and you want to pick up Ni no Kuni, you got about 10 days. I think that's long enough to get some good time into Link's Awakening. That's reasonable. And Link's Awakening is going to be a game you can go back to, put down for a while, come back to it. It's not a game you necessarily want to just sit down and play from beginning to end. Whereas with Ni no Kuni, that's more story driven. You don't really want to like put that down for a couple months and come back to it. I guess you could, but probably not. So that's September 20th. Then 4 days later, potentially we have Witcher 3, which has all the DLC and everything. So you're looking at around maybe 100 hours to get through that. And that's only 4 days after Ni no Kuni. Granted, you don't have to beat it immediately, but then only 3 days after The Witcher 3, you have Dragon Quest 11, which is going to have even more story content, a 16-bit version of the game, and an orchestrated version. So, like, only 3 days after The Witcher 3. Like, it's like you're just gonna get to the point, I think, for a lot of people where they're just gonna have to choose. Do I want to play Dragon Quest 11? Do I want to play Ni no Kuni, or do I want to play Witcher 3? Because I could see myself. Granted, we're talking about Switch games here. I could buy all 3 for $60, and even if I didn't get to it for like 8 months, it would still be $60 in the store. But it's one of those things where, should I buy it at full price, or should I just buy the game I know I want to play first and then see if the other one comes down in price?
Now, granted, if you're an RPG player, it's going to calm down after September, because I'm looking at it right now, and you pretty much have the Outer Worlds in October, which I think is going to be a great game. That looks fun. That's from the people who made Fallout New Vegas and the original Fallout game.
Yes.
And then you have, of course, the new Pokemon in November. And Shenmue 3, if you're a Shenmue fan.
Yeah. Pokemon Sword and Shield, because I've been playing Pokemon Crystal, or was it Crystal? I'm trying to remember now. I'm sounding like a noob right now. No, Silver, my bad. Anyways, Pokemon Silver on my Pocket Go, the little emulation device we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. So I've been playing that a fair amount.
I've been playing Fire Red on mine.
Hey, there you go. Maybe if we had a link cable, we could trade some Pokemon.
Well, it's Gen 1,
I guess that wouldn't work. Whatever.
You Gen 2 pleb.
Yeah, what am I going to do? So, but anyways, I've been playing that a lot. It's a really good game. I'm really been enjoying it again, playing it through this time. I really enjoyed it as a kid, and it's kind of got me in the mood like, yeah, you know what? I'm ready. I'm going to jump in the Pokemon Sword and Shield and just give it a go. So I do think that's going to be a day one purchase for me. I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah.
And especially in November, there's not really much else in November that's coming out that I know of anyways, that I'm going to really be interested in at this point in time. So that's a really good chance that I'm going to pick that up. You said Shimu's coming around Shenmue 3's coming around at that time?
Yeah, but that's for niche. If the game's really good, then I'll highly recommend it to people, but I have a feeling that's going to be a very niche title if you're a fan of the first 2 games.
Yeah. Or do you plan on picking up the Alliance Alive remaster that's coming out on October 8th?
Oh, yeah, that too. I told myself I'd give that game a proper second chance. And right when I was thinking about playing it on the 3DS again, they announced the Switch version. I'm like, well, I have to wait for the Switch version.
Yeah, I played an hour and a half of it, so I don't know if I can really comment, but
I played about 5 hours.
I liked what I saw, but
It's a good game. I'm not going to say it's a outstanding game, but from what I played, it was a very good RPG.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to blow you away if you're just like a average player, but like
Well,
people who
longer,
are
right?
tend to like the niche JRPG genre, then like it's more for like the niche genre, just the way it is in its battle system.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a good game. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's for people who like the more old school type JRPG.
More turn based, is that what you're getting at?
More turn based and just the nature of how you progress in the game and such.
Yeah.
And some mechanics they require out of you.
Yeah. So I definitely want to give it a shot. And I was watching, I'll try to pull some of it up real quick. But there's a trailer kind of showing the difference between the 3DS version and the Switch version, and it looks way better. I mean, obviously that's shouldn't be surprising, but I think it's worth picking up if you enjoyed the original, because it really looks like it's
the jump from 240p to 1080p.
Yeah, so it should look a lot better. This is right now. This trailer right here is just a regular trailer, but let me see if I can pull up the one before where it had Switch Alliance Alive compared to 3DS. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is comparison, and okay, so yeah, see, it just looks so much better. So some other parts right there, and get to the part. It's just like night and day. So this looks just a lot better. So I'm really excited to try this. I'm not going to have much to play around that time anyways. So really, really, really excited to pick that up.
That seems about to be the bigger titles. There might be some like small ports.
Well, there's two. Yeah, there's two games that are supposed to come out in 2019 that I'm interested in, but we just haven't gotten a release date. One is Final Fantasy VIII. I'm interested in picking up that remaster because, yeah, they've redone the character models, and there's that report that there could possibly be some voice acting, but probably not. But I'm interested regardless to pick it up because it looks like they put a lot of work into it. So, the
game has its faults, but I enjoy playing through it still.
Yeah, so I just want to add it to my collection and just say, hey, I got it on Switch 2. So I want to pick that up for that reason. And obviously, I'd be really excited if there was a physical version, but I'm sure it's just going to be digital. Speaking of the Final Fantasy games, I saw a tweet from Square where they said they fixed the music bug where the music replays after every battle. They fixed that in the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII. And they said, yes, just because we know you all are going to ask, we're also going to fix the music bug in Final Fantasy IX on the PS4. And we're currently working on fixing it in Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IX on the Switch. So really excited.
Something they should have done almost a year ago.
Yeah, like why don't you just do that before the game releases? But I'm just glad it's being fixed because, like it's been years for the PS4 versions. It's ridiculous. But so yeah, Final Fantasy VIII though coming out this year. I'm excited to play that. And then Crosscode, that's supposed to be having a Switch version coming out in late 2019. And we're getting to late 2019 and we still haven't seen a release date for that. that I've seen. So I really want to find out when that game's coming out on the Switch, because I have it on PC. I love it on PC, but I've kind of stopped playing it on PC because I would prefer to play it on the Switch with the joystick controls and everything. I think it'll play really really smooth on there. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah, I
waiting
want to
to
play that on Switch also. That's why I stopped progressing on the PC version.
yeah. So but yeah, that's about it. I mean, there's some honorable mentions for me. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, September 24th. I'm kind of interested in that because I want to see if that will play well on the Switch. I initially played the second one on PC and I really liked it. I tried playing it on a tablet like 10 years later and it was playable, but I just didn't get into it as much as I did back when I played it on PC. So I'm kind of interested to see how it's going to play because, that style of game where it's kind of top down and you have to click on stuff. And I'm just interested to see how that's going to work with the Switch. Also, Planescape Torment is coming out on the 24th as well. So, I own that on PC. I played it like an hour. I know it's a great game, but that style of game, I have to be in a specific type of mood to play because they're very, very long. There's lots of the guesswork, lots of reading, which is fine, but I don't know. I have to be in the right mood to play them.
Yeah,
But
that's about it for me. So
yeah, so that's essentially all I have too. So we didn't get to really comments from Discord this week, but we'll jump into that some more next week. But yeah, that wraps things up. So appreciate you all sticking with us. People in the comments, thanks for hanging out with us and leaving some comments. We got Dude McGuy, Gears. Thanks to Dude McGuy last week for stepping in for Eric while he was sick. A lot of people were speculating, Eric, that you weren't really sick, that you were just neck deep in Shadowbringers.
I told myself I am sure this is the first thing I'm going to hear when I tell people I'm actually legitimately sick. I got back from Indianapolis that Thursday afternoon, and I already started got a tingling feeling in my throat, and I was like thinking to myself, "Oh, what's this? Whatever." But then by the next day, while I was trying, it was really difficult for me to play Shadowbringers because my body kept wanting to shut down every hour. And then I just yeah, this was straight on not good for me for that rest of the weekend. But I knew that was the first thing that people were going to bring up, and I was like, well, I have to do it. So let people say what they want.
Yeah, I was telling Stan last week, like, man, this is the worst week for Eric to be absent because we talked about the Final Fantasy 14 live action series. We talked about Bloodstained. We talked about the Pocket Go. These are all things that you were excited for. So, but yeah. So, but anyways, we'll be back next week with some more topics. We'll hit up some Discord questions as well. And thanks y'all for watching this week. We'll catch y'all next week.
All right, take care.